All right. So I wanted to introduce our panel for the So You Want to Work Outdoors. So first we have Bonnie from the North Carolina Coastal Federation. And Bonnie's actually a UNCW alum. So thank you so much for coming back and sharing your path. We also have Morgan from the U.S. National Whitewater Center. Hi, Morgan. And then we have Gabriel with the City of Wilmington, specifically with the Parks and Rec Department. And Gabriel is also an alum. So welcome back, Gabriel. All right. So we'll just kind of start with some general introductions here. So Bonnie, we'll start with you. So can you just tell us a little bit about your organization and your role and maybe what a typical day looks like for you?
Sure, absolutely. So I'm Bonnie. I'm so happy to be here, and I work for the North Carolina Coastal Federation, which is a 501c3 nonprofit that works to protect and restore the coastal water quality and habitats of North Carolina. I work as the Coastal Education Coordinator. So a lot of what I do is manage our volunteers, our interns, our events. I help and assist with our development and administrative and communication needs. I also am heavily involved with our oyster shell recycling program and our North Carolina Marine Debris Action Plan. And so with all of that said, there's really no typical day for me. Every day looks very different, and it keeps things very interesting and sometimes a little overwhelming. But it is, every day is a little bit different. Sometimes I'm working with the action plan and working with different stakeholders and coordinating to make sure that we're recording all of these accomplishments. Sometimes I am working with volunteers and coordinating their work out in a rain garden or maintaining a living shoreline.
Awesome. Thank you. Morgan, I'm actually going to turn it over to you. And same thing, kind of just tell us a little bit about your organization, your role, and what a typical day looks like.
Sure. So I work with the U.S. National Whitewater Center. Our facility has everything from ropes courses to 100-foot jumps. We have flatwater kayaking on the Catawba River. And then, of course, the Whitewater Center, we have our man-made whitewater channel. I work specifically with hiring and recruiting. And so I'm helping out, meeting new people. A lot of our positions are part-time seasonal and they're entry level. And so it's really fun because I get to work with a lot of people who are in these outdoor rec programs and they're trying to get that real life professional experience. And so to kind of split it up, my typical day is I am at a desk a lot right now. I do a lot of phone calls, I'm interviewing, I'm looking at people's applications. I also help with inviting people and welcoming them to the center with our larger orientations where we tell them about all of the training opportunities that we have, because when you enter in with one team in our outdoor activities department, you're not just entering one team, you're this whole department. And so, you can come in as a raft guide, but then maybe you turn into a land guide later. And so I like to educate people on how to get involved with that. Whereas with a guide, as you're coming in, you are out in the field all day. You clock in our lounge, and then you're inspecting courses or you're inspecting gear. You're helping guests out onto the courses and having a good time. And then you're just troubleshooting. It's a lot of fun and it's really engaging.
That definitely sounds like fun. I'm like signing up for that. Gabriel, what about you?
All right. I work for the City of Wilmington and the Recreation Department. I'm the Recreation Coordinator over at Maids Park. At our park, we also have what's called our GS Davis Community Center. A lot of the programs that we do at our location, we have our youth programs, summer camp programs, after school program. We do offer family exercise and nutrition classes. We have senior programs that we normally run in the mornings, and that can range from Jerry Fit or fitness classes, senior bingo, crafts. We also are currently working on starting a teen program or a team leadership program. Hopefully, in the fall, we'll be able to offer that. And then we also have adult programs, housing education, personal finance, and then we have occasionally we have several special events like our Halloween festival. This last one we just did last year, because of COVID, we had to kind of change things up into a drive-through Halloween event, which actually was pretty successful. So, um, I guess typical day for me. Normally, my mornings entail our senior programs. They normally run from 9 a.m. to about noon, where depending on the days, we have our regular senior social time, our senior line dancing, crafts, or like fitness programs. Midday is normally administrative work, making rosters, making a supplies list, transportation rosters. Um, Afternoon, we do have our after school program that runs from 2:30 to 5:30, where we pick up kids from two separate schools within the area. We do different programs. We have several organizations that come out throughout the week. We have a STEM program that's offered on Mondays and Fridays for the kids, where they do science experiments. They learn about um, coding, and a couple other things with that. And then on other days, we have volunteers that teach kids how to play lacrosse, tennis, soccer. So a lot of different organizations that we work with within Wilmington that come out and help out the kids, teach them new things. And then for in the late afternoon, we offer adult fitness classes. We this coming March or March 16th, we are starting a Zumba class on Tuesdays, and then on Thursdays it's yoga. So those are free classes that are offered to anyone that wants to come out.
I literally had no idea that this was a thing.
Yep. Yeah, so it's something that with the adult classes, we weren't sure if we were going to be able to have it indoors or outdoors just with COVID and some of the restrictions. But it just got approved, so we already have flyers out. We're going to be posting on Facebook just to let everyone know that it is available and it is free. And then occasionally on several certain months, we have our Halloween festivals, pretty much our big one for the year. We've we've already done it 2 years in a row, and they have been pretty successful. We've had a lot of good feedback on it. Tons of candy for the kids, different activities for them. So that's pretty much it for kind of my typical day.
Yeah, lots of things going on, that's for sure.
Oh
Lots of
yeah.
different people, age groups, activities. So Gabriel, I'll actually stick with you. What would you say is your favorite part of your job? And then maybe what's something that's not so glamorous that you think people should know about if they're considering going this direction?
Okay. So my favorite part would probably be working with the kids. The area that we live in or that we work in is a lower, I guess, poverty line. So with all of the things that we have to offer, a lot of these kids normally don't have the opportunities to learn either different sports, learn about the different STEM areas, and a lot of them or a few of them have like rough lives. So when they're with us, just going out and playing basketball with them or playing flag football, tennis, just kind of teaching them different things. I enjoy that a lot. I have kids myself, so I enjoy working with the kids because often you'll come in contact with some kids that don't really have, I guess, solid, I guess, family lot or area. So at least when they're with us, they're happy, they're safe, and they just enjoy their time with us. The not so glamorous, I would say, sometimes with or sometimes with developing certain programs, it can be difficult, especially now with COVID. We haven't been able to offer our normal programs. So now we're having to incorporate our like technology, internet, and do things online. So that's been a big change for us, something that we never really had to do.
Yeah, I'm definitely hearing that from a lot of people throughout the week. It's like if you are used to all that face-to-face interaction, that transition to all of a sudden having to Zoom with everyone, it's
Yep.
Zoom fatigue is real, that's for sure. Bonnie, what about you? What's your favorite part? And then maybe the not so glamorous parts.
So my favorite part of the job is definitely the days that I get to go out into the field. So whether it was, pre-pandemic, we had lots of these volunteer events where we would go and bag recycled oyster shells and build a living shoreline, and plant marsh grass behind it, and coming together to restore those wetlands. That was the best part. It was so much fun to be out in the field, working in the place that we love and building those connections and relationships. But I would say then on the least glamorous aspect of it would be the opposite of that. So when I am, behind the computer, doing the types of research and data input that can be very tedious, and you have to do a lot of stretches for the back because you're hunched over the laptop working away. I would say that that's not the glamorous part, but I think it's been a great experience for me to see just how important all of that goes into these projects that we do.
Absolutely, thank you. And Morgan, I'll pass it over to you.
Okay, so to talk a little bit about my favorite parts of this job, it kind of bleeds into my job and then also when you're working as a guide, because I started out as a guide and I was one since 2015 on and off. And so over all the spectrum of when I'm working now, more in the office and admin, to when I was out in the field, my favorite part was being able to see the growth, not only in all of our guests, everyone who gets to come out and enjoy the facility, maybe for the first time, or maybe this is something that they're an expert on and they've been doing it for years, and finding a facility that has everything in one, but also watching the growth in our guides. I mean, over the years, people will start out as a guide, and I'm a great example of this, is that you start out as a guide, you're kind of getting your feet wet, and it's just like our guests. They're just getting their feet wet. They're trying to learn what these activities are. And then over time, you start growing into these leadership positions and you understand how the whole center works and how, we're the outdoor activities department, but there are so many other departments that people are involved with here. So you don't just have to be doing the activities. You could also be someone in guest services. You could be someone in our marketing team or any of that stuff. And so the really glamorous part is just seeing all of the potential. I kind of joke around that I'm in the business of potential energy. And that's both with our guests and then also when I'm hiring people, because again, a lot of people are going to come here who are just coming out of school, or this is a summer job and maybe this is the first time they've ever encountered this kind of position. And there's a lot of life lessons that can be earned from that. So that's pretty exciting, especially with all the different programs we have. I started as a theater education major, so I wasn't even in outdoor recreation, and this was still a home for me. And so anyone who's watching this right now, if you're in outdoor recreation, awesome, keep going with it. It's a great place to be. And then maybe if you're not in outdoor rec yet, give it a look. Maybe it's something that you do during the summer, and then maybe you get involved in school later, or maybe it's just something that's always a hobby. But there's so many opportunities, and that's really the cool part. And then the not so glamorous part would probably be, again, when people don't see that potential. So, you're working with guides and maybe they think it's just not for them because they haven't found the right fit yet, or, where they could fit in. And that can be very discouraging sometimes, especially for them. I mean, for us, we can show them the path, you can lead them to water and everything, but it's up to them to drink. It's up to them to see that potential. And it happens in our guests too. Like you don't realize how much of a, therapist, counselor you become when people are on those ropes courses or they're trying to do something that they think they're stuck, and it's completely mental. But a lot of times people think it's their physical abilities. And so that's sometimes not so glamorous when you have those moments. You have to do a rescue and you have to lower someone to the ground. And but usually we can try to spin it around. But I would say that's the least of the glamorous parts.
Morgan, can you actually share a little bit more about what a guide, like that position entails, and how did you first get involved with the Whitewater Center as a guide?
Absolutely. So to talk about guides, there's a lot of different layers. So we have some entry-level positions, and when I say entry, I mean you don't have to have any type of certification prior. So being a raft guide or a land guides deal with aerial sports. So that's the zip lines, ropes courses, climbing, things like that. Raft guides obviously help with the raft guiding. And those ones we have training. So if you don't have any prior experience, we have some type of training in place that can help you get to where you need to be. Then we have other ones that are a little more specialized. So we're going to have things like flat water guides and deep water solo lifeguards. Flat water guides are going to be on the Catawba River, and they need to have some kind of CPR first aid certification. Now, if you don't have one yet and you're working on it, that's totally fine. Please still apply. Deep water solo lifeguards are going to be working at the deep water solo facility, which if you haven't been here, you haven't heard of it, it's essentially a 45-foot wall where people can climb, but it's solo climbing. So they don't have a harness on, but when they fall, it's into a 20-foot deep pool. And so that's why we need lifeguards for that. It's a very different environment than, say, your public pool. So if you're like kind of burned out on being a lifeguard, this might be a completely different experience for you. And then another specialization we have are bike technicians that work at our trail center. And so we look for people with some kind of mechanic experience. And that could be a hobby. If you're someone who works on bikes and you know all the ins and outs, you've watched a lot of YouTube videos, you might be a great candidate for that. And all of those positions are something that you could even move into if, at first you wanted to start as a land guide or a raft guide. Some other positions are going to be our whitewater kayak instructors and our SUP yoga instructors. Those ones you need to have a good bit of experience in order to be involved with. And that's because for SUP yoga, believe it or not, stand-up paddleboarding yoga instruction has its own specific certification. So that's something that you would need to have prior. And then whitewater kayaking is a pretty intense game. And so to be an instructor, you have to have a lot of experience. So getting out there, getting on the water. One thing that's great is that a lot of these opportunities are available to our staff members at a discounted rate, or they're just more aware of it than our normal guests. And so you could actually get involved with those so that over time you can gain that experience. That's why I often say that we're a mecca for training in outdoor recreation, because you have all these opportunities to continue to grow. And then of course our summer camp counselors, and that is a big thing that we have during the summer. We've got a lot of different groups that come in, and we have varying different programs. So we've got youth programs, we've got teen programs, we have rock ride and paddle, which is kayak instruction. Sometimes we have wilderness ones where they're going out on field trips. Right now, that one's kind of on hold just because of everything going on. But these are things that are available. And then we also have environmental educators, and those are for our other programs where we have groups come through and we have a ton of different topics. We're developing a nature camp. We've got lots of really cool programs for that. So if you're in teaching, that would be a great program for you to try to apply for. And what was the second question? Those were all the positions.
I was curious how you first got your first position at the Whitewater Center as a guide. Like, what kind of led you to that?
Yeah, so it was really interesting. It was back in 2009 when I first moved to North Carolina from New Jersey. I was in Charlotte and everyone kept talking about this Olympic training ground. And so we just drove up here one day and there wasn't much here aside from the Whitewater Channel. We had a smaller zip line set up and then there were a few ropes courses, but I didn't really know enough to really understand what I was looking at. But I knew it was really cool and I wanted to be involved. And so from that point on, I just kept thinking about it. And as I was in school, I needed some kind of summer job and I was burnt out on theater stuff. I love theater. It was really fun, but it was just something I needed to be outside. That was a big thing. So I looked up the website, I applied online, and it pretty much steamrolled from there. I got an interview. At the time, we actually made people do one of our hardest ropes courses, which is called the spur. You have to be able to do a full deadlift pull up before you go on that one to prove you can finish it. I couldn't do that pull up. And they told me it was okay and I could do it anyway, which I thought I was going to be safe from that, but I did it. And what was so incredible was that the instructors that we have are so supportive. And every year they just get more supportive. We get more creative on how to train. And I made it through that ropes course. And in that one experience, I suddenly realized the power of outdoor recreation and what that can do for a person. And so from that point on, I started as a land guide. I was working at our site called Hawk Island. And so I dealt with our larger zip lines and ropes courses. And then over time, I became a team development facilitator, which is where you're working with smaller groups from businesses or organizations. And you're essentially making them go through adult playgrounds, I kind of joke around and call it. And you're just telling them, all right, guys, you're a group. You're going to go from point A to point B. Someone's missing a leg, go. And it's a really fun experience for people to get involved. And so I enjoyed that because I got to be a little more one-on-one. But I did that simultaneously while working as a guide. And then over time, I just slowly kept putting my name out there. I kept going through trainings. And I would leave, actually. I was working seasonally. And so I would leave, do some other jobs, come back. And ultimately, coming back with the experience from other locations only made me even better as a guide. And so that's something that I would stress is if you do work seasonally, it's a great opportunity to keep coming back or going somewhere else and get that information and then bring it back to where you were. So those are some tips that I have, and that was kind of my typical day.
That's great. Thank you. There's so many good nuggets and tips and advice in there. So well, Bonnie, I want to hear a little bit more from you. Can you tell us a little bit about your career path and how you got involved with the North Carolina Coastal Federation and your current role?
Sure, absolutely. Yes. So I knew from an early age that that the environment was what I wanted to study and wanted to work in. It was a documentary on coral reefs that I saw when I was 11. I said, "Oh, I have to go save the coral reefs," which isn't exactly what happened, but it was a fun journey. So I figured out, pretty early on that marine biology was what I wanted to study. And so at the time I was living in Richmond, Virginia, and I looked up schools that had great marine bio programs, UNCW being one of them. The second I toured campus, I knew this was the place I wanted to be. And so I studied marine biology at UNCW. And when I came in, I was certain that I wanted to do research and that I wanted to research, go on to get my PhD, become a professor, have a lab, and constantly roll out all of these great papers. It was actually through a couple different internship experiences that I did that I realized that wasn't exactly the avenue that I wanted to go to. I did several internships working in labs, and then I did an internship with the Army Corps of Engineers where I worked as an environmental education intern. And that was just one of those summer internships that I got to try something different, and I loved it. It was exactly what I wanted to do. I was able to use education, which was something I always liked, but I didn't like the idea of being in a school, in a classroom, teaching every single day. And so being out in the environment and being able to teach that while we're in it, that was everything to me. And so that really shaped how I progressed through college and the different opportunities that I took. I started volunteering heavily for Plastic Ocean Project. Their mission was really close to my heart. I hate seeing trash everywhere on our, beautiful planet. And so I started volunteering with them. I eventually became elected onto their executive board, all volunteer work. And I became their volunteer coordinator. And I also, while doing this, I actually worked at a zipline guide. I worked as a zipline guide and as a nature boat captain at the Charlotte River Swamp Park. And I loved that as well. That also taught me that I really love being out in the environment, working directly with people. But it actually ended up being through that volunteer position that I came across somebody who worked at the Coastal Federation. They knew that I was looking for a job at the time, and a job position opened up, and they were the one that recommended me to the Coastal Federation. And so that's why I'm a huge advocate of both internships and volunteer work, because they're really what led me to where I am today. I wouldn't be here if I hadn't taken those different internships, and I wouldn't be here had I not dedicated so much time to that volunteer work. And so that's really what brought me here.
I love that. I tell students all the time, it's hard to know what you like and what you don't like if you haven't actually tried on that experience. And, working in the lab, taught you that you don't want to do that. So even a quote unquote bad internship experience or bad lab experience can be so helpful in navigating your career path.
Exactly. I tell those to my students all the time that I work with to really look, find what you don't like, because it can be just as helpful as finding what you do like.
Absolutely. And you touched on this as well, having all of those different experiences helps you to really build your professional network, just introduces you to new people, and those relationships are what really landed you that job.
Yes. The networking is so huge. And I didn't really even know that I was doing it at the time. I was just going out and I just wanted to be involved. I wanted to feel like I was doing something productive at the time. And I ended up meeting so many great people that I work with today. And I never would have known that at the time. And so, I really stress that as well, that going out and making those connections are so important, and not necessarily, keep it personal, because I built a lot of friendships with these people, and now we have a great working relationship together. And so I often tell that to our interns that come in and they network, and I tell them, it's not necessarily about going out and selling yourself. It's really going out and meeting people and forming these connections. And when they get to know you and realize, what a great worker and good person you are, then that's when they want to bring you into their organization.
Love that. Thank you. Well, I am keeping an eye on time, and I definitely want to give you all an opportunity to really connect with our panelists and maybe ask any personal questions that you may have. And I know some of you talked about this, but students, I recommend that you ask the panelists about how you can get involved in their organization, or any organizations that they may be aware of, whether that's a shadowing opportunity, volunteer, internship, whatever that may look like. So Emily, we can go ahead and stop recording if you don't mind. And Emily's going to open up the breakout room.